further ado, we have a special guest speaker tonight, Irene Smith. Irene Smith ran for City Council in San Jose, which is how I got to know her a bit. Irene has worked in several different fields. As an attorney, she has her own mediation and arbitration practice. She has been a judge pro tem for the past 15 years, hearing well over 2,000 cases, and an administrative hearing officer for the county of Santa Clara. She worked for IBM in finance and marketing for 18 years, and with her education in mental health, she counseled children at the Pacific Center, which was a locked hospital in downtown for children with severe mental illness. She's been a small business housing provider and property manager for over 30 years. Her undergrad is in accounting. She received a law degree from Santa Clara University, and she has both her master's degree and PhD in psychology. Most recently, as I noted, she ran for San Jose City Council to represent the district downtown. She had quite an experience with the kind of woke people of our valley who went after her unmercifully and made all kinds of accusations against her, which had no basis in fact, but that doesn't stop them. Downtown has the largest concentration of unhoused people in San Jose and in Santa Clara County. She founded the Business and Housing Network for San Jose, the United Housing Alliance, and the Independent Leadership Group. She's written extensively about the laws that govern homelessness and the potential solutions. And we are spending, literally in the state, billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars on homelessness. And we don't seem to make a dent. Here we're spending $1 billion in homelessness and nearly that, and it seems to not alleviate the real pain points for people in our communities. So I invite Irene to come and talk to us about where our money's going.
I knew where the money was going. That's the problem. I have no idea where it's going. So as Shane explained, that's a little bit about my background, and I'm going to talk for maybe about 15 minutes, and then I'd like to leave the rest of it for you guys to be able to ask some questions, because I think it's really important for you guys to just come here to ask everything you want to know about the homeless situation. So a lot of people want to know how did we get here to begin with? And from my way of thinking, it's about 3 different things. First, we have something called Housing First, and it's a policy that really took off in California and in San Jose in about 2011. It happened before that, but it took off in 2011. And this is where you hear everybody talking about how expensive the fixed assets are for a home or a structure for housing. So right now we're up to $1.1 million a door for an apartment for permanent supportive housing, PSH. 1.1 million, that's at 21st and Santa Clara Street in downtown San Jose. That does not include the land lease, the property management, the repairs, any kind of services those folks need, utilities. That's a fixed cost, and it's jaw-dropping, but that's nothing, absolutely nothing compared to the variable costs. So we are not spending our money wisely, and it's housing first. And what's unfortunate is that my impression is a lot of the nonprofits are really taking advantage of the housing first mentality to say, we're not doing anything but housing. And it's okay if somebody suffers and dies, quite frankly, on the street for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, because the more extreme it gets, the more all of us feel terrible about it and are willing to throw money at the nonprofits to just fix it. They're saying, no, we're not gonna fix it unless we get housing. We need 1.1 million per door. And then at one point, there's gonna be an explosion because we're gonna run out of that $1.1 million per door. We're not gonna have it. So that has been part of the mentality. So it's leading a lot of people on the street until we come up with the space, until we come up with the builders, until we come up with the money to get these apartments built. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is we have a new type of meth. And you may have read about it in the Atlantic. There's a guy that's done a tremendous amount of research, and he's done wonderful, wonderful articles about what's happening with the new meth. 10 years ago, meth was made with Sudafed. That's why we now have controls on it. But since the controls, people are smart, right? We figure ways around things. So when there's a law that says we're gonna control how much Sudafed you can buy, they're gonna find another way to manufacture meth. And they have. And it's coming from everywhere. Brazil, China, the Ukraine, everybody's making it. It's easy, you can make it in your basement. You just need a couple of chemicals, and the problem is, it's really intense now. Really, really intense. Where 10 years ago, you could do math for 5 years before completely frying your brains. You can do it for 1 or 2 tries, and you'll have psychotic episodes. And you're seeing that on the streets in downtown San Jose. So that's problem number 2. And then, as far as I can see, our next problem is something called Martin v. Boise.
Say that
And
again.
that's Martin v. Boise. It's a 9th Circuit District decision that affects the states in Arizona to Alaska, Hawaii, and we're all under this ruling. And it says you cannot criminalize homelessness behavior. Okay, that sounds good. I don't want to criminalize somebody for being homeless. I don't want to do that. But it's been expanded to something that's untenable. We're not going to criminalize somebody for sleeping on the sidewalk. We're not going to criminalize somebody for standing in front of I had somebody call me this morning, I can't get into the 7-Eleven. There's a guy screaming in front of the 7-Eleven, I'm really thirsty. I'm like, oh, just go home, your house is closed, just go home. No, so this is what's happening. It's unlawful at this point, and the laws are not being enforced primarily because of Martin v. Boise. So what does Martin v. Boise say? You can't criminalize the behavior. And bottom line, unless you have shelter. So if we had enough beds, and really it's beds. Matt Mahan and I have disagreed on this in the past. I think hopefully maybe he's changed his mind. It's beds, it's not doors, it's not a rooftop. The en banc case was very clear, you don't have to have a traditional roof to be considered actual shelter. So if we can come up with 10,000 beds and prove that we have that shelter for the 10,000 folks that are out there, then we can start enforcing our laws. We can start enforcing the no fire policy that we have. We can enforce the no loitering and the no, urinating in public. A lot of the things that you're concerned about, the things that nobody wants to go to downtown about, are the things that are happening because we can't enforce them based on Martin v. Boise. And it's been taken to the Supreme Court and they denied it. It may go eventually up there, but so those are the 3 problems. So how do we, my whole gig is we can actually do something within a week's time to actually help people and get them off of the streets, off of the creeks, stop the fires. Let me tell you a little bit about the fires for a second, because Stanford came out with a study, and they did it twice, to demonstrate that children who are exposed to these type of toxic fires, and I mean fires that are as big as this area here, piled high with stickers, and they're set on fire, and computer parts, and all sorts of plastic. When children are exposed to that type of air quality, they actually suffer permanent and irreversible IQ damage. So what are we doing? If we think that that air just stays in downtown, we're kidding ourselves. So my solution is something called the Incremental Ladder of Housing Success. And you can look that up, you can Google it, you should be able to see a couple videos, and there's a big bunch of charts and things. But it helps people get onto a ladder rather than throwing them right into PSH, permanent supportive housing. Some of these folks are very ill-equipped. They leave once they get in there, and they go outside to sleep because it's too quiet. They sleep on the floor because they're not familiar with a mattress. There's no transition plan. It's just put them in there. And then, I take a tour of South 2nd Street Studios, and they explain, oh, we had to install this distance monitor so that if they turn on the stove and they leave for 2 minutes and they're more than 3 feet away, then we have to have the oven turned off. And I thought, well, I don't have that. But they have it, and that just increased the price of everything, because we haven't helped them learn how to acclimate to these new types of situations. So the incremental ladder of housing success lets them do that. My hope is that we can use part of the Santa Clara County housing, the fairgrounds, because it has an asphalt, concrete area. We can allow each homeless person to have 12 by 12 space with a tent for privacy. And then above that is something called a sprung structure. And if you look on some of my Medium articles, and Shane can help you get that or reach out to me, I can take it down to a $5,000 per person head count cost. And I think we have other people who are out there saying that we should do tiny homes at, $150,000 to $350,000 per person. And again, I gotta say, that's pretty similar to that 1.1 million. I don't think we have it. I don't think we have the 350,000, and I don't think we have the 1.1. I'd love it. I'd like my daughter to have one of those. But I don't think that's realistic. So what can we realistically do to help folks? So picture a 12 by 12 square. You can have your personal property, your pet, and your privacy for tent. And then above it is something called a sprung structure. And it's a tent that protects from weather. And then we can get another sprung structure for the cafeteria, work, job training, and that kind of thing. But we're gonna need to use the fairgrounds, and the county has been really resistant to that. And I talk to people all the time about, hey, we've got to figure out a way to use this, because seriously, in a snap, if we ordered one of those sprung structures, got it put together, we could start moving people right away. We don't have to wait. We don't have to endure the fires. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions, and then I'll let you know that I'm speaking around California regarding this. Tomorrow, I'm speaking in Manhattan Beach. Which is very close to Venice Beach. We may have heard the sheriff talk about how he's just taken things in his own hands because he's done. But so again, here I'll take some questions and then we'll go here. I'm going to start with Ty in the back. Go.
I was on the Fairgrounds Management Corporation board, and if you want to use the Fairgrounds Management, it's going to take something at the supervisorial level to change the charter for that organization. Right now it's entertainment and cultural. But it is centrally located, it has the footprint, it has a lot of very positive things for homelessness. But it's going to take something at the supervisor level, and Otto Lee is going to be a tough load. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll tell you the same thing I told Sam Licardo. Cricket and crisis don't belong in the same sentence. And if we think that we have a crisis, and I live in downtown and I'll tell you we have a crisis, then we shouldn't be focused on some sort of, entertainment first. And then also then turn around and tell the taxpayers, oh, guess what? We need 1.1 million per door, and we're building 800 doors in one building. So I say, I don't care about that charter. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of land in southern Santa Clara County. Could any of that be used?
It could. My numbers get changed dramatically if the asphalt or concrete isn't there. That really increases the price point. And then also the fairgrounds has running water and electricity, so that really cuts down on costs too. But if you know some other place also, and I think it's there are a lot of services close by. I do get a lot of questions from people who live in that area, and I say, I think it has to be understood that you folks have got to get a lot of extra security if this is gonna be in your neighborhood. You're gonna take a hit for the entire community, and I want Palo Alto to pay for it. Because, San Jose is really getting hit with a lot of the charges and the burden of the homeless population. And if we can do it, okay, all right, we can do it, but we should be well compensated, and that neighborhood should be well compensated. And they should also be asked, hey, so if you're doing this for the community, if you're gonna step up to the plate and really help, what is it that you as a community want? Maybe they want a park, maybe they want some sort of kid activity thing. Let's all pull together and get that for them, because they're gonna do this for us. And the other thing I remind people is that on day one, we've gotta go in with the mentality that says we are working our way out of business. This thing is not going to grow, it is going to shrink. I don't want this on my tombstone that it's been here for 500 years. So it has to be contracted, and we have to be able to put people into other locations when they're ready, whether they're being built and they're ready, or the person themselves is ready. Yes, sir.
Two things. First of all, does Huntington Beach already done this?
Huntington Beach, yeah, my husband has, been down, my husband back there is Ken. He went down to, Los Angeles, and they have, sprung structure,
It's
in.
working, right?
I'm sorry?
And it's working for them, right?
It is working, and, they have, they have 60,000 unhoused folks in LA.
And then the second thing is, my business is walking distance from the fairgrounds,
Mhm.
and trust me, they got lots of homeless people already.
Yes, yeah,
All over the place.
yep, but it's not managed, they're not getting the services they need,
My
they don't have their
business is
pants
broken
on, I
into-
mean, there are a lot of issues.
All the time, the cops say, too bad,
Yeah,
it's just the way it is.
yep, but because the cops' hands are tied.
I
They
understand.
can't, Martin v. Boise ties us all up. Everybody's trying to figure out a way around this,
Yeah, it's a problem already.
yeah, yep. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way around, I understand that we don't know where the money has gone exactly, and that the groups are resistant to being accountable.
Yes.
Is there a way around all that?
I think it's us is the way around it. I think that we really have to ask them to be accountable. What I like in the newspaper and in Spotlight, I see a lot more defense of Housing First. I see a lot of the nonprofits, Housing First is the best thing ever. And I see a lot of nonprofits defending how they're spending the money. And they've solved this, and they've handled this many people, but they don't really let you get under the covers, because there's some suspicions out there that somebody comes in because they're unhoused, and then they're housed, but then they leave, and then they get rehoused, and so then they're counted twice, and then they leave, and then they come back, and then they're counted 3 times. So the tracking is a fascinating process. So yes, I'm so sorry, you've been so patient.
Yeah, I might be patient. You probably have a better question. So, at Spark, a few months ago, somebody spoke about they're doing in San Antonio, to move the services to the location that they have
Yeah.
the people, and that seems to be working. Is that a piece of this too? or
Yes.
are the services out there?
Yeah,
instead of-
I gave you such a brief high level. I've got, a 4-page, 6-page document on Medium that you can go and read it. It's gotta have the services component. As a psychologist, I can tell you that if you're not treating the whole person, it's just gonna go sideways for them and for everybody else. And in psychology, we talk about meeting the client where they're at. And if they are right now in a tent, it is not inhumane to move them over to another tent where it continues to be familiar to them. And then we can transition them with the services. I'd like to expand it to, work training and have that as a community where they're all participating and making their own community better. A lot of folks that I talk to that are in these encampments value their communities and they wanna stay together. Okay, stay together, whose turn is it to sweep up?
And do you know about the San Antonio?
I do know about the San
Okay.
Antonio thing. It's a little bit different, and I think either one, take one, one of them.
Right.
But we keep postponing, constantly. There are lots of roadblocks with the fairgrounds. I've talked to Cindy Chavez a lot about it. I understand the idea of making money, but again, if it's a crisis, and I'm telling you, I'm living in a crisis. There are nights that I've gone to sleep with an N95 mask on because of the smoke that comes into my house from the encampments. And I think a lot of San Jose doesn't know about that. But, yes, sir.
First, a large cut question, then narrow it down a little bit. When you're homeless, where do you belong? The reason why I bring that up is because I'm the only member here is from Alameda County. Last night, Fremont, City Council meeting approved Project Home Keep. Curious your thoughts about Project Home Keep. Essentially, they bought a Motel 6, 180 rooms, low for 100% for low income housing. They're calling it housing shelter, about a mile from the Tesla factory. Yet they have no control over who gets in this facility. Part of the issue is, could you use it, for job training? No. It can be for mentally ill or drug addicted issues. So when you're homeless, they said, is it only Alameda County? Can they sneak across to Milpitas, or get Milpitas, send the people over to Oakland? I mean, there's all sorts of craziness. Where do you belong when you're homeless?
Yeah, well, I have a bigger question for you. So San Francisco County has agreed to be part of the pilot for Care Court. Y'all know about Care Court?
No.
Okay, so Newsom's actually done something that I'm interested in. He's going to, make it so that you can have somebody really, contained at a mental health institute for a long period of time, not just Laura's Law, which is it's an outpatient treatment, and this would be long-term inpatient treatment. It is going to go through, but San Francisco is gonna pilot it. What's gonna happen when those folks up there realize that they are going to be in this pilot and they're gonna be asked to be, placed in a mental health facility for, 1 to 2 years? Because I think they're coming here. And unless we're prepared for that with the incremental ladder of housing success, where we have actual beds for folks, then we won't be able to enforce the laws. Even worse. So I think that a person who's unhoused, they don't belong anywhere, but they should have a place.
I'm gonna bring that up because really it seems like this should be a state issue as opposed to a local government issue.
And maybe
It's
a
too much of a
federal
burden for the city of Fremont or the city of Milpitas or the city of San Jose. This is because a homeless person is home, he needs to find a home. So,
Yep.
and it's a lack of leadership out of the governor's office
Absolutely,
is a problem.
and the feds, I ought to believe. And you asked about Home Key, and I see some success with Home Key in San Jose, but it depends on where it is. And the community, I keep stressing, community, then this goes to your point with your business, the community around the Home Key or around an encampment has gotta be supported. Because if it's gonna be successful, whether it's PSH or whether it's Home Key, if it's gonna be successful, it's gotta be embraced by the community. And right now, there's just a fight. We don't want you, I don't want
Milpitas
you,
has already twice fired their, people managing it because it
Yeah.
didn't work out well. And
Yep.
Fremont, their infinite wisdom to get past CEQA reforms. The only way to get Home Key done is you get to bypass CEQA, provided you guarantee union workers to put $355,000 per unit of improvements in each room in Motel 6, which is outrageous, and a 55-year lease that they're responsible for to provide supportive counseling, which is a huge bill for the city of Fremont.
Which is
to do.
also
And
optional.
For that, both of that, then you can bypass CEQA, so you can build it.
the counseling is optional, so.
Not with this particular, if you got bypass CEQA, they have to buy a 55-year lease with an operating agreement. The operating agreement had counseling. as
It's
part of the
optional
deal.
until we get Care Court, that's the problem. I'll go to PSH and South Second Street, and I go down where Abode is all supposed to be offering counseling, and it's row after row of cubicles that are empty with therapists. And I ask, well, why is this empty? Well, it's optional, the residents do not have to attend, it's an optional program, so, but, yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with what the mayor of Coronado did with their homeless problem? Coronado is the island in San Diego.
Yes, yeah.
And he basically went to everybody and said, do you want help? And anybody who said yes, they got to stay. And anyone who said no, he shipped them off the line.
Wonderful. And that is possible, because it's back to San Diego, because it's an island, and because they probably, because they're meeting Martin v. Boise. The same thing is happening in Arizona, right? You're reading all about Arizona's cleaning their sidewalks. Well, it's because they have enough beds. It's either they have enough beds or they don't have a bunch of activists suing them. But I'm guessing it's because they have enough beds.
They want to be homeless.
Yes, Wendy?
So leading into that, what happens when, say, Palo Alto doesn't want people and they end up in San Jose? What are the laws on that? If you can't say that homelessness is illegal,
So
what are the rules about scooting them along?
I think that it's a county discussion, and I think that unfortunately, the bell has already rung. San Jose has it. And so I think if we acknowledge that we have it and that there's a possibility that we can help folks and move them out of homelessness, let's take that burden on and ask those other cities to help out financially. Because it's a big deal, because we could put that encampment right on the front lawn of Palo Alto, and we're not. So we have it, let's deal with it, let's solve it ourselves, because, we got our big boy pants on.
I was just wondering about the legality of saying Mountain View, we don't want any homeless people, so we're just gonna scoop them out.
And
If they don't have housing.
if they have enough beds, that's what's gonna start happening. The first city that wakes up and realizes, I've got enough beds, and those people who don't wanna be housed, those people who wanna stay on the creek burning stuff down, they're gonna go to that next city. They will. And you won't have to move them along. They will go. They will go.
But if, we get our 10,000, but or San Francisco shifts a bunch down, then we have to get 15,000.
Yes, but if we have beds before care court takes place
Gotcha.
in San Francisco, then we have a different situation. We're able to enforce our laws. Yeah, I'm so sorry, yeah.
I think one thing that you're overlooking here is going back to the nonprofits. I was involved in trying to protest the building on 4th Street, North 4th Street, and we had some big meetings. Evidently, the people who run these nonprofits have tremendous salaries, like up to
Yes.
over $1 million per year. And they are motivated to push all this stuff, so they get their salaries, and I think
Housing
that's
first.
a real problem.
It's not housing versus called salary.
Yep.
And I think I'm correct in that, I mean.
Yeah, I don't think that they're all making $1 million.
Well, they're not all, but.
They're certainly, they're hot, I'm a volunteer, so they're certainly getting more than me.
Yeah, right.
So I think that there's definitely that problem. I think that their hearts are in the right place. It's just that what's happening has just snowballed, and they're leaving a lot of people on the streets.
Yes.
And they're just being very stubborn, saying the only solution is housing first. And unfortunately, it really does financially benefit them.
I may disagree with the hearts in the right place, I think. there's a lot of
They're
good
trying,
in there.
they're trying to do something. It's just not working.
You're more optimistic than I am.
Yes, she is, isn't she?
So you talked about services, so is that to address the underlying cause, right? 'Cause
I
there's
think
various reasons.
we need
people are
mental
homeless.
health, we need drug addiction, we need alcohol addiction, we need all sorts of assistance from a mental health standpoint, to get some of these folks. And I think folks need to be sorted into what categories they need the most help in.
So if they have a bed to sleep in, then what would be, and that's 5,000 for the structure, then do you have any idea what the estimate would be per person for
I figured it to be about,
services?
I did just a rough number, about another 5,000 for the cafeteria and then plus the services.
So only 5,000?
Yeah.
To do
And that
drug
five-
addiction,
The 5,000
counseling,
is
or-
ongoing, the second 5,000 is ongoing, and the first 5,000 will be fixed.
Okay, so is there, like, I know in San Francisco, they have a real issue with, like, they have open air drug markets, right? So they have tried it with buying the homes and then thinking that would solve the problem, and then the people end up back on the streets,
Yeah.
sleeping where the drug dealers are because they can buy their drugs unfettered.
Yeah.
So does San Jose have that same issue? Are they allowing pretty much the open air easily?
It's
and
not,
drug dealers
it's
aren't
not
being
as bad
arrested?
as San Francisco, but we have so few police. And we also have the Martin v. Boise, the cops are just in such a hard place, right? Is that a homelessness behavior that they could possibly be, criminalizing homelessness behavior,
Should drugs be considered a homelessness behavior? I don't think so. So,
And there we go, right?
if
at the
only
court.
homeless people did drugs, that would be one thing, but it's not the case. So I
Right.
don't see how that can be considered homeless behavior, and they should be able to do something about that.
And perhaps peeing on the sidewalk isn't either, but the court system has been clear. And what I said was that the scope has widened in terms of what can be considered homelessness behavior. It started with sleeping on a park bench, and it's bled. The way to fix it is to get these beds, to get a shelter, to make sure that we meet everybody, and that the ones that don't wanna go someplace else.
How's
Yeah.
San Jose doing on getting their 10,000 beds?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, they haven't started. Nobody's picked up my plan yet. It would really be nice if somebody in San Jose picked up my plan versus somebody in Manhattan Beach or San Diego.
No, I meant the homes, they're going for housing first, so do they have to get 10,000 houses, is that what they're saying?
They're not saying that because they know how ludicrous that sounds.
Yes.
I know they opened a little
tiny home place in my neighborhood, and they're doing that.
Everywhere, they've got
Do
lots.
you know how many they've got so far?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I focus on the, unhoused numbers, and D3 downtown has the highest concentration
But it's hundreds, not thousands.
of,
Right.
of,
Houses.
oh, yes, yeah.
And it was 800,000 apiece.
In Santa Clara County, we have about 10,000. They did a count, and they did the count really poorly, and they had to revamp their numbers. So they're saying it's close to 7,000. I think these numbers, you know, everybody goes out at 5 a.m. in the morning to count people living on the creek. So I don't know how accurate that is. And then, of course, they did a real screw up, and they wouldn't release the numbers prior to the election, which
Oh.
was.
How can we help you get the fairgrounds?
Read my stuff, you know, sign up to, and subscribe to my Medium account, and forward it to people, forward that, you know, I've had, 1,300 views on my, article on the, incremental ladder of housing success. Forward that to anybody outside of California. The more we get people talking about it and saying, this is what we expect from our government, I think that would be success. We can.
And the county supervisors that control that,
They can, I think that San Jose can do it, you know, and I think that they should turn around and ask the county for money for it.
yeah.
But forward it to like Otto Lee.
Yeah, forward it to Otto Lee, you know, what if Otto Lee got it from, you know, 100 people?
What's your website?
I'm sorry, my Medium account is, Irene Smith at, Path Seldom Travel, and that's with 2 L's.
I'm Smith at Path.
It's hard to hear that.
It's kinda hard to hear you, ma'am. Oh, sorry, it's, the Medium account is Path Seldom Traveled, and that's with 2 L's, traveled is with 2 L's, it's the English spelling.
And what's Medium?
Nobody in here knows what medium count is, but I'll ask for them. What's a medium
Let me-
account?
Can I help you?
Yes, please.
If you give me, the secretary, the information, I will put it on the website.
Oh,
Oh,
That
and
way
were
everybody
those in
can-
the links that, I think they were in the links that you
Yeah.
posted.
Whatever you have, is,
Okay.
what, little description so people know what they're getting. and a link,
Okay.
and then we can make
Okay.
sure that happens.
okay, and you can send me his email.
Yeah.
Okay,
Secretary has to review the comment.
okay, perfect, all right. Thank you all very much for coming.
For your talk and your informative talk.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys are welcome.